On a seemingly ordinary October day in 2011, the quiet town of Zanesville, Ohio, faced a shocking and unprecedented crisis.
911.
Yeah, there's a lion on Mount Perry Road in Grayshot.
I'm pretty sure, and I just saw a wolf.
I think I just seen one. Looks like a jaguar or a wolf or something.
We live next to Terry Thompson, and there's a bear and a lion out.
There's a bear and a lion out?
Yeah, right up behind us.
Terry Thompson, a Vietnam War veteran and lifelong collector of exotic animals, had just been released from prison. Known for his Muskingum County Animal Farm, Terry Thompson kept a staggering array of exotic creatures, from tigers and lions to bears and wolves. But on that fateful day, chaos erupted when 56 of these exotic animals were suddenly set loose, turning the peaceful community into a scene of sheer terror.
Officers armed with assault rifles are on patrol near Zanesville, Ohio. They're on the lookout for exotic animals that escaped from a wild animal preserve.
It's scary. You don't know where they're at, and if the cops can't catch them, they're going to be running wild, crazy.
18 tigers, 17 lions, 8 bears, a baboon, among others, and it's not over yet.
As night fell and authorities rushed to control the situation before anyone got hurt.
Well, right now we're shooting to kill.
The horrifying truth behind Terry Thompson's actions would soon be revealed, leaving everyone to wonder what drove a man to unleash such deadly animals. Terry Thompson, a 62-year-old Vietnam War veteran, was a lifelong collector of exotic animals and worked as an animal handler on Wild Kingdom. In 2008, Terry owned Muskingum County Animal Farm, a private zoo located in Zanesville, Ohio, United States. Terry had been raising exotic animals since 1977, when he bought a lion cub named Simba for his wife Marion's birthday. At that time, owning exotic animals wasn't illegal, and nothing prevented Ohioans from keeping tigers or alligators caged in their backyard.
There's nothing to stop you or me from going to an auction in Ohio and buying a bear and bringing it back here.
As his collection grew over the next 24 years, he occasionally used the animals for photo shoots or commercials, including a photo shoot with Heidi Klum. Marion Thompson, Terry's wife, said that she and her husband took in many of the animals because they were abused and unwanted, and they kept them because they were animal lovers. She said, "In a zoo, you'll see animals that are stressed every day. Here they are relaxed without conflict. They know they're loved and cared for." Terry said that raising these animals wasn't about money. He said, "I have them because I love them, and am willing to do whatever I have to take care of them. What I don't have them for is profit. I have 7 veterinarians on call at any time. If one of my bears gets a hangnail, I call a certain vet. If a cat sneezes, I call another vet. I don't use the animals for commerce, so I'm under no regulations like a zoo, but I make sure my animals aren't a threat to the community either." Despite what Terry said, authorities had responded to numerous complaints about his property. The farm had been repeatedly reported for inadequate and unsafe housing for the animals, as well as insufficient water and food. Neighbors had previously complained of animals escaping due to improper fencing and causing damage to neighboring property. Tom Stulf, the chief operating officer of the Columbus Zoo, visited Terry's farm and found malnourished animals roaming around, rows of unsafe cages, and piles of beat-up tractors, lawnmowers, trucks, and cars scattered around. Tom Stulf said that Terry became a hoarder of animals, and it got out of control. He stated, "Picture a junkyard and then put 56 animals there. It was difficult to determine what was going on there." In late 2005, Terry was sentenced to 6 months house arrest following his conviction for having an animal at large and cruelty to animals, as police found that 3 cows and a buffalo had died from starvation. Terry argued in the case that the animals may have already had diseases which contributed to their deaths, and that they had consumed contaminated water and feed. Again and again, law enforcement authorities were called out to the Thompson compound on Copjack Road over the years to follow up on dozens of complaints, a lion on the loose, horses, cows and bulls breaking free and trampling neighbors' property, and a mountain lion sighting. Serious allegations arose again in 2008, involving reports of animal cruelty and public safety abuses. The reports included improper fencing and cages without roofs, cages secured by plastic ties, and other makeshift methods. Lions, tigers, bears, monkeys, wolves, leopards, and mountain lions lacked food, water, and shade, and were living in unsanitary conditions in cages caked with layers of urine and feces. Pens were so tight that the animals, particularly tigers and lions, could not get sufficient exercise. Pens located right alongside each other caused stress and anxiety for the animals. Lion cubs showed signs of bow-leggedness due to malnutrition. A mountain lion suffered tremors, and there was sewage and standing water in the bear's pen. There were injuries in need of treatment, such as a cut over a bear's eye, a horse with an injured leg, and lesions on a lion's hips. However, local prosecutors declined to charge Terry Thompson with animal cruelty after inspectors from the Columbus Zoo and the Muskingum County Humane Society visited his property. Muskingum County prosecutor Michael Haddocks said, "We had several experts out at the Thompson place, including a number of veterinarians, and even experts from the Columbus Zoo, and they found nothing wrong." Following the 2008 inspections, local authorities expressed concern that some of the cages were insufficiently secure. They decided to work closely with Terry to remedy the situation, rather than pursue charges. In addition to collecting exotic animals, Terry was also a gun collector with a federal firearms license. In June 2008, however, his farm was raided and more than 100 guns were seized. This led to his sentencing in October 2010 for possession of various machine guns and sniper rifles, including 8 with missing serial numbers. A federal agent involved in the firearms case against Thompson stated that the interior of his house was so cluttered and foul that officials had a hard time searching it for weapons. Special Agent James Ash of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco and Firearms said, "The residence was of such a poor environmental condition that it was unsafe for us to breathe the air." Terry Thompson was released from a federal prison in August 2011 and freed from a Cincinnati area halfway house on the 30th of September 2011 after serving a year-long sentence for possessing illegal firearms. Around this time, Terry and his wife Marion reportedly separated, and things were about to get a whole lot worse. On the 18th of October 2011, Terry Thompson used bolt cutters to open the sides of the majority of the cages holding his 56 exotic animals. He then unlatched the gates to his 73-acre farm. At 5 p.m. that same day, a woman called 911 and reported seeing a bear and an African lion loose just inside the outer perimeter fence of Terry Thompson's property.
We live next to Terry Thompson, and there's a bear and a lion out.
There's a bear and a lion out?
Yeah, right up behind us.
A flurry of 911 calls from other witnesses then came in, all reporting sightings of exotic animals running loose.
911.
Is there a bear or something loose right now?
There's a lot of things loose.
I thought it was here first, and I got a picture of my cell phone.
911. Yeah, there's a lion on Mount Perry Road in Gray Shot.
I'm pretty sure, and I just saw a wolf.
I think I just seen one. Looks like a jaguar or a wolf or something.
At 5:30 p.m., Sergeant Stephen Blake of the Muskingum County Sheriff's Department arrived at the farmhouse at 270 Kopchak Road and sounded his horn. Receiving no response, Sergeant Blake sounded his horn in front of the house a few more times before seeing John Moore, the Thompsons' animal caretaker, arrive to do the nightly feeding. John Moore insisted that Terry must be somewhere on the premises, so they got into Sergeant Blake's cruiser and drove up the hill to search the house. As the pair drove down the entrance road, they spotted the lifeless body of Terry Thompson. He was lying flat on his back, off to the side of a dirt drive, between the rear of his house and an adjacent barn, with a visible gunshot wound to his head. One of the 18 adult tigers that he and Marion had raised from cubs stood by, guarding the body, making it impossible to approach Terry. Alongside the body lay the pair of blue bolt cutters Terry had used to open some of his animals' cages, as well as a stainless steel Ruger .357 Magnum revolver. As other officers arrived at the scene, they tried to contain the animals. 50 of the 56 animals had fled through open doors and cut cages. Among the 50 animals that were released were lions, tigers, bears, wolves, and a monkey, all wandering away, some headed for the highway. With darkness fast descending, they had to quickly find all the animals before someone got hurt. Muskingum County Sheriff Matt Lutz said his main concern was protecting the public in the largely rural area. Their top priority was to stop the animals from getting out of the fenced-off area and threatening neighboring houses and Interstate Highway 70. Federal Division of Wildlife officers were drafted in to help with the situation, as well as staff from the Columbus Zoo, who were called on to tranquilize the roaming animals. When a veterinarian from the Columbus Zoo came within 15 or 20 feet of a Bengal tiger on Terry's property, attempting to use a tranquilizer on the animal, the tiger became aggressive and was shot and killed. Another responding officer was approached by a bear, and the officer shot the animal with his handgun.
To be charged by a black bear and to have to defend yourself with your sidearm, you don't get training like that for this job.
Fearing the animals would scatter and terrorize the town, and with the approach of nightfall, a shoot-to-kill order was issued. Muskingum County Sheriff Matt Lutz said these animals were on the move and were showing aggressive behavior. There were some very close calls.
Public safety was my number one concern. I gave the order on the way here that if animals looked like they were going out, they went down.
The following day, as not all the animals had been found, schools closed, and people were warned to stay indoors for fear of ravaging tigers and bears. Road signs blinked cautionary messages of escaped animals, saying things like, "Caution exotic animals."
Went to a friend's house, didn't know anything about it. His mom was freaking out. She says, "You guys can't leave." Not allowed to go outside at night last night, or let any of our animals outside.
Muskingum County Sheriff Matt Lutz said, "We didn't want kids waiting by the bus stop and seeing these big animals."
Men staying indoors right now. We're going to recommend to a couple of the local school districts to probably close tomorrow just for safety reasons of kids standing at the bus stops.
In the end, 48 animals were killed by the local police. This included 18 endangered Bengal tigers, 6 black bears, 2 grizzly bears, 1 wolf, 1 baboon, 3 mountain lions, and 17 African lions, 9 males and 8 females. 3 leopards, a small grizzly bear, and 2 monkeys were left caged inside Terry's home, and these animals were tranquilized and sent to the Columbus Zoo. This left 2 animals unaccounted for, a monkey and a wolf. The wolf was later found dead and was presumed to have been killed by another animal. The monkey was never found, but police warned the public to stay away from it if spotted, as it was highly likely that it was infected with the herpes B virus. In the end, the monkey was also presumed to have been eaten by one of the other animals. Following the hunt, Muskingum County Sheriff Matt Lutz said, "We feel that Mr. Thompson died from a self-inflicted wound. We also feel he had released these animals at some point. Not only were the gates open, but some of the pens were open. The animals were then laid out on Terry's land to ensure that they had all been accounted for. John Moore, the animal caretaker, was brought over to identify the animals. He said, "The next day was harder for me than anything. I had to stand in the middle of all those dead cats, and I had to identify every one of them. When you feed them every day and you water them and play with them, and they respond to your love for them and love you back, how hard do you think that is?" The surviving animals, 3 leopards, 2 monkeys and a bear, were taken to the Columbus Zoo and Aquarium. Columbus Zoo Director Jack Hanna said that when Marion Thompson arrived on the scene, she was shaking and angry because she wanted to keep the animals. Jack Hanna said, "She said, 'I've lost my husband, I've lost all my family now, and now you're taking my children.' She said she was coming to rip me apart because I was taking her animals. She's in a state of shock right now, obviously. She cried on my shoulder and said, 'Please don't take my family. I held her there for 3 to 4 minutes and I said, "Please, let me take your animals. I'll take care of your children." She said, okay. I could have yelled at her. To lose 18 Bengal tigers in the world today is beyond a tragic loss. I can't describe what that does to me, along with all the other creatures. But when you see a woman that's lost everything, what do? Do I sit there and yell at her? I sit there and console her and tell her I'm going to try to help her with her animals that's left, which is nothing, basically. That's all I could do.
Do you have any reason to believe the situation at her property is an appropriate location for these animals to be living? I mean, what were the conditions like? Is she capable of caring for these animals?
Anderson, the question is, her husband went to prison for a year. She left him. Remember that? My question is, so I understand that she didn't go back to take care of them. So now all of a sudden, she wants the animals back. She said she has a love for them. She may have a love for them, Anderson, but you don't love something and put them in the horrid conditions that were up there. There's no way over my dead body, and it might be that pretty soon, that those animals are going to go back there to the same conditions, and I'd wake up tomorrow morning saying, well, and let's say they got out again or something happened. Can you imagine what they'd think of not just the zoo, but the state of Ohio? Are we crazy?
Following the massacre, many people questioned whether the officers really needed to kill the animals, and if Muskingum County Sheriff Matt Lutz's shoot-to-kill order was truly necessary.
We understand there's people frustrated and disappointed and mad. We are. We're the ones that's been put in this situation. We're the ones that had to deal with it at the time. This is their house. This is the large barn. This area right in here these are all pens where these cats and bears were kept. This area back here is all pens and bears, pens of bears and cats where they were kept. But as you can see, this distance from here to here is where several animals were killed in this area, preventing them from getting on the interstate. The other area is along this property line here. Back on this, I believe Mr. Polk owns some property back here, but these animals also went this way, trying to vacate the land and go that way.
One caller on a local radio station called it animal murder, suggesting that officers could have found a more humane way to handle the situation. Wildlife expert and Columbus Zoo director Jack Hanna, who advised Lutz during the crisis, supported the officers' actions, stating that the main concern was protecting the community. He said, "No one loves animals like I do, but Lutz had to do what he had to do. I'm sorry to say, but what the sheriff did had to be done. Otherwise, we would have had carnage out here in Zanesville, Ohio. Tragedy-wise, for me, it's probably the worst thing in 45 years of history of working with animals. I've seen poachers kill in the wild. I've seen animals killed right in front of me with their horns cut off. I've seen a lot of things happen in my career, but nothing like this have I ever witnessed. It's going to haunt me for the rest of my life. What happened here last night had to be done, or else we would have had some major losses of human life here this morning. And I won't forget what happened here today, as long as I ever live."
If what he reads to you got loose last night without his work and his sheriff deputy's work, you would have had something here worse than any oil spill in this country, worse than I can even imagine. I'm sorry this had to be done, Sheriff, but if you had 18 Bengal tigers, everyone, running around these neighborhoods, you folks wouldn't have wanted to see what would have happened.
Following his words, Jack Hanna was heavily criticized by animal rights supporters, with many asking why the animals could not have been tranquilized rather than killed. Jack Hanna responded by saying that tranquilizing animals in the dark was incredibly dangerous. He also noted that even if tranquilization had been feasible, they did not have enough tranquilizers on hand to safely manage all the animals. He said,
"The tiger tried to get the veterinarian. He had to shoot the tiger 3 hours ago up here just now." So tranquilization is something just, let's pop an animal, he's going to go bam. Can you imagine trying to tranquilize an animal in the dark? Fine, we have a spotlight on, we hit it. You don't know exactly where you hit. Did you hit it in the muscle? Did you hit it in the bone? If you hit the bone, that means the plunger might not go in and get the medicine in. So what do? Then we send the veterinarian up there, the sheriff up there to see if the animal's down, right? What's going to happen to the animal just sitting there and not even asleep? You're dead. I've seen a Bengal tiger, Diane, take down a 2,000-pound water buffalo in India, filming them in less than 10 seconds. A 2,000-pound water buffalo. It's like an explosion going off.
Tim Harrison, a retired police officer and director of the non-profit Outreach for Animals, said even if the sheriffs had tranquilizer rifles in their cars, they'd have to know how to dart. "I do that all the time. You have to assess the size and weight of the animals as they're running around in the dark, guess the right amount of medication, and inject it into the dart. Then, if you manage to hit the animal in the right spot, it still takes 15 to 20 minutes for the drugs to take effect. That's a lot of time with a tiger charging you, or with the woods nearby, for the cat to disappear into and then wake up later. People are crazy to think these animals could have been tranquilized.
The two biggest hurdles would have been we do not carry tranquilizer guns in our cruisers. We have about 32 primary response cars in the county, and none of them are equipped with any type of tranquilizer gun. So when the first responders arrived on the scene, we already had animals outside the fenced area. Obviously, they were released from the cage. They were running loose in a pasture field, and some had already been outside the fenced area. So there was no time to wait with the idea that public safety was number one for us, and we did not want these animals roaming our streets in an unsafe manner. The second part of that is the time of day. We received the first 911 call on this at 5 p.m. The majority of our officers didn't arrive on scene until 5:30, 5:45, which left us with merely about an hour to an hour and a half of good light before it got dark. There were so many animals running at large that we just, I made the decision that we were not going to have wild animals running loose on our streets. There was no way of telling which animals would lay down, which animals would run all night, where these animals would end up, and that's why we made that decision.
Debbie Leahy, a captive wildlife regulatory specialist with the Humane Society of the United States, also said she did not take issue with what the sheriff's deputies did. Instead, she blamed lax regulations in Ohio. The group issued a statement urging Ohio legislators to implement an emergency rule to crack down on exotic animal ownership. She said, "It's something that we see all too often in places where there is little regulation. These animals pay a high price for people's selfishness." Terry Thompson's motives aren't exactly known, but it was known that he was deep in debt, had an estranged marriage, and was facing house arrest after a year in prison for a gun conviction. One of Terry's neighbors, Danielle White, said that Terry had been in legal trouble, and police confirmed he had recently been released from jail. She said, "He was in hot water because of the animals, because of permits, and the animals escaping all the time." His friends believed that the farm and his already shaky finances got worse while Terry was behind bars. He owed $68,000 to the Internal Revenue Service and county in back taxes and had 2 federal liens placed on his property in 2010. Max Perdue, a friend who had known Terry for 40 years, said, "While he was in prison, I guess that Marion had a really hard time taking care of the animals. Lawyer fees and everything just about broke him." They said that his wife left him not long after, and Terry told his animal caretaker, John Moore, that he had received a disturbing letter about his wife, Marion. In addition to problems with his wife, Terry told John that he was concerned about being electronically confined to the farm, a condition of his release from federal prison on the 30th of September for his conviction of possessing illegal firearms. Terry Thompson reportedly told John that he had a plan. He was determined to find out about the things that were bothering him, including questions about his marriage and how he would face his impending confinement over a criminal conviction. Terry Thompson reportedly told John Moore, "I have a plan to find out, and you will know it when it happens." 5 days before his death, Terry met with a federal parole officer and expressed his distress over the upcoming year-long electronic confinement. The federal officer reported that Terry said he was overwhelmed by the conditions at the farm and the amount of work required to care for the animals. Years later, the 70-acre Muskingum County farm was transformed into a motocross track, and although many of the animals are buried on the property, there are no visible signs of the tragedy. In the end, the surviving animals who had originally been sent to Columbus Zoo were returned to Marion Thompson.
Cleveland Metro Parks Zoo spokesperson Sue Allen says she can't believe exotic animals are being released back to the property where dozens of animals were killed last year.
It's not only an animal welfare issue, but it's a public safety issue, as we witnessed in Zanesville last October.
Marion Thompson has taken possession of the remaining animals. Allen says the problem with private exotic ownership is greater than most people realize. The 5 survivors, 2 leopards, 2 monkeys, and a grizzly bear were transported in these trailers back to Thompson's property. They'd been cared for at the Columbus Zoo at the request of the state for 3 months.
Animal welfare groups pleaded in the aftermath of the panic for tighter restrictions or a ban on private ownership of exotic animals. Will Travers, speaking on CNN, said that the wildlife slaughter on the streets of Ohio was nothing short of appalling. He said, "It's great that no humans were injured, but that doesn't make it right that 49 wandering animals, confused by their sudden and unfathomable freedom, were shot dead as though they were alien invaders. They're not. Wild animals are just as entitled to live freely on this planet as we are, and Ohio has to step up its lax laws to reflect that." Following the Zanesville incident, Ohio lawmakers began working on new legislation to ban private owners from acquiring, selling, and breeding restricted species in Ohio. Since Ohio's exotic animal laws took full effect on the 1st of January 2014, the state now prohibits dozens of species from private ownership. The restricted list includes lions, tigers, bears, elephants, venomous snakes, and certain monkeys. Owners who had registered their exotic animals and met the caging and care standards in the law could keep their animals as long as they lived. However, they are prohibited from buying new ones or breeding those they have.
There's going to be folks out there that skirt the law, and they're going to have possession of wild animals without us knowing it. We're never going to end that. But I think today we are definitely in a much better place than we were back when this happened.
Tim Harrison, a retired police officer and director of the non-profit Outreach for Animals, who drove from near Dayton to help that night, said,
"Hey, I like to say good morning, but man, this is the elephant in the living room. This thing's been hanging over us for years, and I've been doing this for 38 years, Steve, and this is the worst thing I've ever seen. My heart goes out to all the police officers, the sheriff, Jack, all the people out there. It was just a horrendous scene."
"It was the worst thing I've ever seen in my life, animals or humans, period. The smells, the sights, everybody with tears in their eyes. I couldn't sleep for 2 weeks. I couldn't stop thinking this could have been stopped." Dan Beatham, director of animal management at the Wilds, the zoo's conservation park east of Zanesville, said, "The thing that caught me is how many times the sheriff's deputies apologized to me for killing the animals. They did exactly what they needed to do. Those guys got put in a terrible position and saved the day. All in all, this is such a tragic story. I know it's a little bit different from the usual cases I cover on this channel, but when I first heard about the Zanesville Zoo massacre, I was in complete shock and knew I wanted to share it with you. Those poor helpless animals did not ask for any of this. They should have been out in the wild, living and roaming free, not confined in small cages for the enjoyment of one man. While I am relieved that Ohio's laws have changed to prevent such tragedies in the future, the memory of this event is a somber reminder of the consequences of inadequate regulations and the mistreatment of wildlife. And as always, rest in peace to all the innocent creatures who suffered and who lost their lives so tragically on that horrible day.